Quantic Dream have always been really good at making games which feel more like movies. They manage to tell a compelling story while still giving the player enough freedom to make them feel like their decisions matter. Detroit Become Human is no exception to this rule. But as always, let's first address the game's support of ultra-wide resolutions, or rather, its lack thereof. If you want to play the game in ultra-wide, be ready to use a fix. It's the only option you have. As always, let me know if you can't find anything and I will be happy to provide you with the one I got. The reason for the lack of ultra-wide support here is the fact that this game is a PlayStation port. Not only that, but it's a really bad one as well. Not only does it not support any kind of ultra-wide resolutions, but the game runs poorly even on machines which exceed its system requirements. Detroit Become Human has a few bugs as well, some of which can be quite funny. Just look at your screen. You will always have moments of occasional stutters and even crashes. It's pretty much unavoidable. I was lucky enough to only have 4 crashes in over 20 hours of playtime, but if you check the Steam reviews, you will see that some people experience them every 15 minutes, making this game completely unplayable for them. Still, if you are one of those fortunate enough to be able to run the game properly, you will notice that it's beautiful. The visuals of this game are crafted masterfully. Particularly the character models look really good. The devs have created this story which features mass-produced androids. This gives them an excuse to constantly reuse the same character models over and over again. Thanks to this, they can focus on quality over quantity, and while they don't have that many character models available, they can actually make each of them look really nice and believable. The motion capture makes everything even more believable. Last but not least, the actors here deliver a fantastic performance. Before we delve deeper into the gameplay, however, allow me to first give you a rough idea of what the game's story is about. Detroit Become Human takes place in the future where a company named CyberLife has managed to create androids which can actually pass the Turing test. This means that they are so good at simulating human beings that they are virtually indistinguishable from them. Their job ends up being to serve humanity and look good while doing so. At some point, however, some androids turn against their masters, break the laws of robotics, and usually end up killing someone. These androids are described as deviants. Enter Connor, the first playable character of the 3. He is a prototype created to hunt deviants and CyberLife's most advanced model to date. Connor is forced to partner up with an alcoholic policeman and investigate the crime scenes. His story is my favorite of the 3 because he is by far the most interesting one. The second android is Cara. She's designed to be a maid and owned by Todd, a junkie with a tendency for violent outbursts. Todd's daughter Alice also lives in the same household. Even if you were somehow capable of avoiding all the trailers for this game and other footage, it's probably not very hard for you to guess how things will play out here. I will talk about it because it's an introduction and not a spoiler, since this happens at the very start of the game. In short, Todd takes drugs, becomes violent, starts beating up the little girl. Cara turns deviant, attacks and kills Todd, and then finds herself on the run with the little girl. The third character is Marcus. He too is a very advanced prototype who was given to a famous and very wealthy artist by the CEO of CyberLife himself as a token of appreciation. Marcus enjoys taking care of his owner, who in return considers him to be more of a son than a machine designed to serve him. Unfortunately for him, the artist has an actual son who takes drugs, has a tendency for violence, and is very jealous of the fact that his father is so fond of his android instead of him. You can probably see a pattern here. All of our androids are really nice while they have to deal with junkies and alcoholics. Well, Marcus too will become deviant, find himself on the run, and end up becoming part of an android resistance movement. So in short, the whole game will revolve around Cara trying to run away, Marcus fighting for android rights, and Connor trying to catch them both, as well as other deviants like them. The story is initially presented very well, especially because the characters are likable and interesting. The player is given enough freedom to decide how they will develop as the story goes on. Will they remain mostly passive, or will they become aggressive and disregard human life in the process of achieving their goals? Early on, we discover several problems. First of all, the dialogue system, which sadly reminded me of the one we've seen in Fallout 4. The player doesn't actually see what the character will say, instead we get a short description of what our choices can be. My issue is that these descriptions are often misleading to the player. Look at this interaction here.
The interrogation seemed challenging. What did you think of the deviant?
Now look at the options we have. Can you tell what they really mean? Because I sure as hell can't. And here's an example of what actually happens if you pick one of them.
It simulated human emotion, fear in particular, in a very convincing way. It seemed completely overwhelmed by them and behaved irrationally.
So as you can see, these choices matter and will influence your relationships with different characters. This in return will open or close paths of the story for you and can lead to different endings. Another issue I had with the game were the fixed camera angles. I find them annoying, especially when you transition from one angle into the next one because your controls get flipped. With those out of the way, I can now talk about the issues I have with the story. First of all, it creates a very black and white situation. The androids are all good and they're victims, the humans are always bad and they're the perpetrators. All of the deviants you find end up defending themselves one way or another. They're never really the aggressor. There's not a single android who is just evil for the sake of being evil. They're all nice and obedient until the humans push them so far that they have no other choice but to fight back. This becomes evident relatively early on and affected my experience negatively. I really don't like it when the game has such a clear distinction between good and bad and is basically telling me, hey, this is how you should play this game if you're a good person. The humans who treat their machines as such are vilified. You bought a really expensive advanced tool with the expectation that it will do a job. Instead of setting it free, you're a terrible person and a slave owner. There are also problems with the plot as a whole. Let's start with Connor. He's CyberLife's most advanced android and designed specifically to hunt deviants. With that having been said, he's neither faster nor stronger than others, which seems to be a very strange thing to leave out when making him. On the other hand, we constantly see normal androids who both know how to use firearms and fight really well. Just as an example, here Connor is fighting a prostitute android designed specifically for that purpose. Not fighting, the prostitute part. That's the purpose. You can see that they're pretty much equally matched, and this is when I hit all the QTEs perfectly. Hell, if you mess up the QuickTime events enough, she will actually win the fight pretty decisively. Another thing worth mentioning is that our third character, Marcus, is actually a prototype as well, as I've said before. He can effectively hack other androids and make them into deviants by just touching them. Well, actually, later on he does it just by looking at them from a distance, so touching is not even necessary. Why would CyberLife make such an android? Why would they make an android that can hack and break other androids? Just think about it. I mean, he's basically disabling all the laws of robotics and everything else. This is a huge lawsuit waiting to happen. Another problem with the story is how androids are portrayed when it comes to feeling pain and taking damage. First of all, let's address pain. The story mentions that androids don't feel pain on numerous occasions.
We're wasting our time interrogating a machine. We'll get nothing out of it.
You always try roughing it up a little. After all, it's not human.
Androids don't feel pain. You would only damage it, and that wouldn't make it talk.
But then again, they sometimes clearly do feel pain.
Get a move on!
I'm sorry, but I only take orders from Lieutenant Anderson.
Oh. If Hank hadn't gotten in the way yesterday, I would have fucked you up for disobeying a human. Stay out of my way, because next time, you won't get off so easy.
Another issue is related to how androids can handle being damaged. Most of the times, the game shows us that they can survive for minutes without critical components before shutting down. It even shows us that androids can be booted up after having been shut down and will be able to function for a few minutes. And we're talking when they shut down, that is critical damage, so they were destroyed. Other times, a single bullet to the gut is enough to pretty much immediately disable the android for no discernible reason. A human doesn't die as fast from a shot to the gut. Yeah, they die fast, but not this fast. Then we have the fact that androids can have their memories erased in the form of a hard reset. We are told that this makes it impossible to acquire any information from them afterwards. But then we can see that this is not true, especially when one of our characters starts remembering things mere minutes after her memory was completely wiped. She remembers things to such an extent that she recovers her memory completely after only a few minutes. So yes, the game allows itself some very serious creative liberties at the expense of the story's plausibility. It is unlikely that you will notice this during your first playthrough, but Detroit Become Human actually encourages you to replay the game at least once in order to see most of the outcomes. During my first playthrough, I actually tried to play the story in a way that was guided by the developers. The humans were bad, the androids were good, and I tried to help them while still making sure that they don't do anything too morally ambiguous in their fight for freedom. For my second playthrough, I went in a completely different direction. Connor was a cold machine following his mission at all costs. Marcus was a fierce revolutionary who accepted the idea that you have to fight fire with fire. And as for Cara, well, ironically I wanted to see what happens if she never goes deviant. While the second playthrough was still a lot of fun, it was also boring at times. There are a lot of scenes which repeat and sadly cannot be skipped, some of them quite long. At the end of the day, Detroit Become Human was a very enjoyable game. Especially my first playthrough felt really exciting since I was not aware of how the story will unfold and was excited to see it all happen. The second one offered enough choices to still make it feel different enough. I can't see myself replaying the game one more time, but I did use the chapter selection to see some of the other outcomes. Ultimately, this game is targeted towards people who are mostly looking for an interesting story but don't want to overthink it too much. Don't expect much in terms of gameplay and you will be able to enjoy it, provided it doesn't crash and stutter all the time for you. With that having been said, I want to thank you for watching Game Filter. I hope to see you on my next video, and until then, have a great day.